A sorcerer walks into a gay bar and disappears with a poof. Alright, we are back again with another 1-bar Oakensoul build in the Elder Scrolls Online. This one has been passed around like the village bicycle for the past few months, but I figured I'd do a quick video on it, so if you haven't been using this build, you can hop on the bandwagon now, and I can feel like I did my part to bring in as many 1-bar bros as humanly possible. Mostly to trigger the people complaining that, some people like to play the game a bit less sweaty. Alright, so using a sorcerer, using heavy attacks, we're going to want to be playing as either a high elf or a dark elf. We don't really need to worry about being a Breton James, because we won't really need any help with recovering magicka since we're spamming heavy attacks all day. You could also play as a Khajiit and that would work fine, just watch out for the 125% critical damage cap. Put all of your attribute points into magicka. Use the Thief Mundus Stone to gain some weapon and spell critical. And then go ahead and eat some Bewitched Sugar Skulls. If you are poor, you can go ahead and use Witch Mother's Potent Brew. And if you're sitting at your house beating up a target dummy, you could go for the super cheap garlic tomato chutney. Our gear sets are super simple and can be obtained from the base game. And those are going to be the Sergeant's Mail and the Storm Master. Sergeant's Mail gives us a massive boof to our heavy attack damage and is pretty much the bread and butter of what we're trying to accomplish here. You can pick this up from the Wayrest Sewers dungeon, both in the first and second iterations of it, and you'll want this on your chest, your lightning staff, a necklace, and a ring. Our other set, Stormmaster, is complementary to Sergeant's Mail and gives us some more heavy attack buffing. This one can be farmed in the Tempest Island dungeon. You'll want to stick these pieces on your shoulders, hands, legs, belt, and feet. Our monster helm is going to be a light Slimecraw's Guise, so we get a critical buff. So all of our armor pieces are going to be divines with max magicka glyphs. Our lightning staff is going to be precise with a flame damage enchantment, especially if you're attacking a dummy. Otherwise you could use a poison enchantment for running normal content if you'd like. We want a bloodthirsty Oakensoul ring with a spell damage glyph for our mythic. And the same goes for our other two jewelry pieces as well. We want those to be bloodthirsty with spell damage enchantments. Be sure to upgrade everything as much as you can afford to do, and you'll notice a slight improvement in your damage output. And as always, don't be afraid to run around with a few blue and purple pieces while you save up gold from your dailies and whatnot. Over in our champion points, do whatever you want in craft. I have Gifted Rider, War Mount, Steed's Blessing, and Treasure Hunter slotted as usual for a PVE character. In the warfare tree, we want to slot Weapons Expert, Backstabber, Deadly Aim, and Wrathful Strikes. Backstabber is here for parsing on a dummy, so switch that out for fighting Finesse when you're doing dungeons and other normal content out in the world. All of this is basically just increasing our damage, so when we stand behind the dummy, we can get to 100k DPS and beyond. Master at Arms is sometimes used in place of Deadly Aim, but after running some tests, I can confirm that I do more damage with Deadly Aim, so that's why I've included it in this setup. Over in the fitness tree, you can run whatever you'd like here depending on the content you're doing. I have Boundless Vitality, Celerity, Fortified, and Expert Evasion. You could also benefit from Rejuvenation or siphoning spells here if you need more recovery. Since we're blasting heavy attacks all day, you probably won't need much on that front, and you have a good deal of survivability as well. Moving on over to our skills, we're going to have two different setups, one for fighting a dummy and another for running content out in the world. So for our Parse bar, we want to slot Barbed Trap for some huge damage over time, Daedric Prey to buff up our pets, Hurricane to passively deal more damage, the Volatile Familiar for our first pet, and the Twilight Tormentor for our second pet. For parsing, you'll want to use the Greater Storm Atronach as your ultimate since it's the heaviest hitting single target ability. When it comes to the setup for parsing, do not question this setup. A double-blind study with a sample size of over 9,000 was conducted last Morndas at 4:20 by a team of researchers at the College of Winterhold. They've informed me that you can make a few changes, like changing out Wrathful Strikes for Master at Arms, which resulted in lower DPS in my case, or experimenting with Crystal Weapon in place of Barbed Trap, or perhaps Power Overload in place of Storm Atronach. But too much time spent beating up a dummy at your guild house is known to cause brain rot, poop brain, wit bane, and in rare cases can even turn you into a furry. Don't say I didn't warn you. Anyways, for our normal setup when we're out and about doing stuff away from Mom's basement, we're going to want to swap out Barbed Trap for Unstable Wall of Elements. This will proc off balance on our enemies, which allows us to hit over 100k on heavy attack criticals. The reason that we aren't slotting this on our Parse bar is because an Iron Atronach trial dummy, which is what most people will be smacking around their guild house, automatically has off balance from being damaged. So Hurricane being active and constantly dealing damage will take care of this in that sort of a scenario. You'll also want to change the morph on your Naked Bird Lady from Tormentor to Matriarch so you can heal yourself and your party. You could leave Daedric Prey on your bar if you'd like some extra pet damage when fighting bosses, or you could slot Critical Surge here to restore health when you land critical attacks. I personally prefer this over the single target option because it's more hands-off and it lasts for 33 seconds. Another good option here would be Razor Caltrops for a more passive damage and a debuff on packs of trash mobs. For our ultimate, we want to use Elemental Rage from the Destruction Staff skill line. You could also use Power Overload to go into Sith mode. Shooting Star from the Mages Guild, or swap in Storm Atronach if you're fighting a single target like a big boss or something like that. So if you have Dressing Room or some way of managing builds, you can easily store these two different setups, and then just keep in mind that you'll want to tinker with your champion points and the Bird Lady morph when going back and forth between parsing and normal content. For our passives, we're going to want to get all of the armor passives, everything from Daedric Summoning and Storm Calling, everything from Destruction Staff. Over in the Fighters Guild section, you'll want to be sure to get Slayer, Banish the Wicked, and Skilled Tracker if you're attacking a dummy, so your Barbed Trap will do a bunch more damage. You'll also want to be sure to get your racial passives, the Undaunted passives, especially since we're using all 3 armor weights, and then anything from Alliance War and crafting that you like to use. So when we're taking down a big monster or attacking a dummy, we want to cast our next skill while our current heavy attack is still channeling. The game will basically queue up your next skill if you hit the button at any time while you're channeling a heavy attack. So you don't ever have to let go of the left mouse button when fighting a big boss or parsing on a dummy. So when something needs to be cast, just queue it up and allow your heavy attacks to finish, making sure that you aren't stopping your heavy attacks. So in the case of a dummy, your rotation would be something like casting your 2 pets and maybe going into Hurricane mode, channeling a heavy attack, and then beginning a rotation of Daedric Prey, heavy attack, Barb Trapped, heavy attack, ultimate, heavy attack. And just recasting whatever needs to be cast in between heavy attacks, being sure to wait for Daedric Prey to explode before recasting it again. And 2 sweaty tips for parsing would be to keep your finger on the left mouse button even through the ultimate. So just smash R when the time comes and go about your business, treating your ultimate like any other spell. The other tip would be to remember that your Tormentor only gets a damage boost from activating it during the first 50% of its target's health. You can run tests to see if you have more DPS keeping her active during this entire half-life, but I find that having to cast that extra spell takes away from heavy attacks, and her passive attacks work out just fine after casting her once at the beginning and then just forgetting about her. The same idea applies in normal content too. Just keep your pets up, being sure to resummon them when they get taken out, using that ability from your Volatile Familiar to get some stuns in, keeping up your Critical Surge to return health on criticals, using your Wall of Storms to set enemies off balance, giving you a window to do huge damage with heavy attacks. So here's a sped up version of a Parse in place of the usual dungeon footage that I would put here, so we can switch things up a little bit. You should definitely be able to get over 100k with this if your flavor of autism would have you barking up this tree, but don't forget about my medical warnings from before. I can already feel myself wanting to create a Khajiit character. Alright, thanks for watching as always. I look forward to diagnosing you in the comments section. Until next time.